Charles, we are doing something technologically new today. It's a whole new approach to the show, very much more complicated in some ways, but simplified in others. How are you, Charles? Great to see you.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be back on. I have to relay a small vignette that I think the viewers will appreciate. I nearly created a small international incident a number of weeks ago when I was staying at the Shangri-La Hotel in Manila. And there was this noise, instead of music, there was this really annoying howling noise. And I put up with it for a while, howl, and then it would stop, and there'd be a screech. It was all over the PA system. And, I was having great difficulty enjoying my breakfast. And I went up to one of the hosts and I said, listen, I think you've got a major league problem with your PA system. Could you please fix this? And the guy looked at me and he went and talked to his boss. And then the big boss came over and said, sir, I'm terribly sorry to tell you that, but that's a famous Indonesian melody. It's Indonesian music.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that nearly happened to me again this morning when I went down, but I didn't say anything in a different hotel in a different country.
Wow. It's funny, Charles.
Why I think of that is I like to open this broadcast congratulating the art department, of course, on a wonderful poster. But in the intervening hours since I saw that poster and since what's happened, that moron, John Kerry, was at some World Economic Forum session where he thought he was being really clever, but he says in this forum that we need to eliminate the First Amendment in America so that the world can be governed better. That guy, it's a miracle that he actually was graduated from St. Paul's, Yale, and I think he went to some lesser law school, I forget, which is absolute miracle. He's so fucking stupid, arrogant, and dangerous, and thank God that moron never became president of the United States. Look at all the damage he did as Secretary of State.
Wow.
We have raging problems in the Middle East today, in part because of the aborted non-deal that he tried to pull off with Iran, which thankfully Trump gutted. This guy he's an arrogant, spoiled fool who should shut the fuck up and stick to making those stupid sandwiches. He should go work at some club, cutting off the crusts on white bread, mayonnaise and cucumber sandwiches. That's what he should spend the rest of his life doing. And he needs to shut the fuck up and be repudiated, humiliated on Twitter.
Wow. Charles, earlier today, I think a lot of people saw, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I went to this Save the Republic conference, and I realize now that Robert F. Kennedy was referring to this. I cannot believe that someone of this prominence would openly call for the elimination of the First Amendment. They're so petrified. It's just such a foregone conclusion at this point that Donald Trump is going to be the next president that they are just pulling out all the stops. Hillary Clinton, you had a tweet on X there where she's doing all kinds of ridiculous things and she's sitting there nervous in the interview. This is outrageous, Charles. We need to discuss this even more. How does this asshole think he can call for the world to govern us and eliminate the First Amendment?
Well, again, it's this conceit that comes out of, I think, his upbringing and people who make it into the top schools in America and in England and elsewhere, that only graduates, esteemed graduates of those types of schools will be allowed to govern the rest of us. That people are really in need of being governed. Good luck trying to govern me. I don't want to be governed by anybody. I just want to live out my life, play by the rules, and hopefully win more than I lose. That's what I want to do. I don't need some idiot from Boston who couldn't get into a good law school for excellent reasons, in part because when he was in the military, he put on his uniform and with no authority from the sitting government tried to negotiate America out of the Vietnam War while he was serving in the military. The man is a disgrace.
Is he a Rhodes
And he clearly
scholar?
didn't legitimately pass any law courses or history courses. He's a moron.
Is he a Rhodes Scholar?
No.
He's
Hell
not.
no.
Interesting. Because Hawkins used to talk about how, well, maybe he's a Fabian socialist, forgive me, not a Rhodes Scholar. Hawkins used to talk about how Fabian socialism was calling for centralized credit and governance by an elite. One quick note that I wanted to let people know who were watching when I was at that Robert Kennedy event, this whole Save the Republic event. I really only stuck around for the Robert Kennedy speech. There was a lot of difficulty in getting there with traffic and everything. And it was, Charles, it was like January 6th in that it's just impossible to live stream from there, so many phones. The good news is Odyssey is such a technologically robust platform. It allows me to replace a failed live stream with the perfect, pristine file from the local recording. So I've done that now. People who want to see today's live stream should get onto odyssey.com/@crowdsource the truth. This is a free video. Anybody can watch it. You don't need to be a sponsor, but it really does help me if people sponsor the show, Charles.
That's a good thing to do.
So what else is on your mind? This is crazy. I think they know that Trump is going to absolutely crush.
Well, there are two things of great significance. I mean, there are three things, really. The first is what Israel is doing now to take more enemies of the United States off the board than the United States took in 20 years. They did in several days, right? Many of these people who were just killed are on the most wanted list in America, or were on the most wanted list. So that's very significant. And the reaction of the know-it-alls at BBC and PMSNBC and DNN, Dunce News Network, has been to criticize Israel, tut Israel, say it's time for a ceasefire, as if the people who are supposedly expert on the Middle East in particular and foreign affairs in general have gotten anything right. I mean, name one thing that these experts got right. They lied us into the war in Iraq. They cheered as George W. Bush attacked Afghanistan because 19 Saudi Arabian people, in theory, committed acts of atrocity against the U.S. We're going to attack Afghanistan. That's obvious, right? The obvious approach. I mean, everything these morons have done for a long period of time has been a disaster. And in particular, everything that the Biden-Harris administration has done since January 20th, 2021 has been an epic disaster. Now, the second link thing, now we have the queen of photo ops, the fake queen of photo ops, decides to simultaneously run an ad where paid actors are, it's been revealed now, have been pretending to be lifelong Republicans who've decided to switch for Harris. These are paid actors. It is a complete fraud. It is campaign fraud. There should be serious penalties assessed against the Biden-Walz campaign for this. And I doubt it's only in Pennsylvania where they're doing this.
Hang on, I missed this story. Hang on, what is happening exactly? Is this Sam Elliott narrates a salty ad for Kamala Harris? Is that it?
No, there's another ad of these two, the Pennsylvania couple, I believe, are said to be Pennsylvania Republicans who've decided to switch for Harris. And that's just total rubbish, that they are paid actors. At the same time, we've learned that people have been able to use some technological wizardry tool to figure out who is actually at these Harris rallies in North Carolina and elsewhere. And it turns out that by tracking the cell phones that are present at these rallies, they were able to figure out that a majority of the people who attended these rallies are bussed in from other states. They're not local voters. So this is a campaign that is built on lies about a proven liar who works for another idiotic liar. And I think the pièce de résistance, the death knell for the Kamala Harris campaign occurred on Friday when she went down to Arizona in a photo op, not with the line agents of Border Patrol, but with managers, and tried to pretend that she was tough on immigration, when as a senator, she bucked Trump at every possible moment. She called the border wall a medieval vanity project. And she's down there at this photo op trying to claim now she's all of a sudden she's tough on illegal immigration and she's the one who's going to fix the problem that she created with her boss. At the same moment, as statistics got released, that there's an estimated 13,000 murderers came into this country, and 16,000 rapists came into this country during the Biden-Harris administration when she was the border czar. She's finished. There's no amount of lipstick that you can put on this thing to turn it anything other than a rotten pig. Her campaign is a corpse. There is no way that she wins legitimately. So the only issue is, will Trump remain safe between now, not just November 5th, through January 20th, 2029? That's the question. Will Trump remain safe?
Yeah. There's not enough glitter in the world to roll this turd in, Charles.
Right. And then, so the third strand of it is what's going on now in North Carolina. All eyes were on Florida with Hurricane Helene, but it turns out that the real disaster has occurred in Western North Carolina and in portions of Tennessee and portions of Georgia. So what does Harris get up and say? She's asked about this, and she says, well, people of color need to get most of this disaster aid because they suffer disproportionately. What the fuck are you talking about? The people who need to get aid are the people who've been harmed.
Yeah.
We're so willing. The Biden-Harris administration is gleefully sending another $15 billion or so over to Ukraine various ways. And you're going to dilly-dally about what we should do here in North Carolina just because, as it turns out, these are Trump voters. These are white Trump voters. Right?
Wow. Whoa.
And she, where is she? She's in San Francisco, another place she destroyed, raising money from her rich zombie friends.
Unbelievable.
And the Biden-Harris administration is doing nothing about it. So this campaign, you contrast the video footage of Trump being put up on the Jumbotron with Kid Rock and some other guy, I forget who the other guy was, and the crowd at a gigantic stadium in Alabama just erupts. Conversely, Tampon Tim has a motorcade going to some football game in Michigan, and he forces the crowd to wait in the rain so his motorcade can go past. Then as he enters the stadium, people start chanting, "Go Trump, go Trump," and he gives them the finger, and it gets captured on video.
Wow. Wow.
This is between Kerry and Waltz and Biden and Harris and Obama. Another thing, the fourth thing, Obama, immediately after Harris's appearance with Stephanie Ruhle on PMSNBC, which was a bomb, as far as I immediately said it was a bomb. Obama tweets out, "That's the most gripping interview. I want to commend to the facts. What's substance in Harris and all this kind of bullshit." And I tweeted to him, I said, "Brother Obama, crack is whack. Smoke less of it." I mean, that interview was a disaster. And in the polling, there was another hilarious clip. I just read about it. I didn't watch it because I can't stand these assholes on MSNBC. But a bunch of them are around a table talking, and they all agree that Harris has a problem with black men and Hispanic men and old men and young men and white men and all kinds of men. Well, if you've got a problem with all of that, you're definitely not going to win.
It's luckily not a big demographic. Every man.
Right. Other than that, we got this thing, and then and the Senate candidate in Michigan, who's a Democrat, was on air saying that her polling suggests that Kamala Harris is in serious trouble in Michigan. She's in trouble everywhere. I think she's in trouble in California.
No one with a brain can possibly think that she's a legitimate presidential candidate. This is unbelievable, Charles. They're describing this as an unprecedented disaster. Somebody was showing the meteorology map, and there are some strange anomalies. We're not going to get into that right now, and I have no idea what they are. But, you're back on X tweeting from @Charles Ortel, so people should definitely follow you there if they want to keep up with your latest X posts. No longer allowed to call them tweets. People can also follow me @JG_CSTT. It's really great, Charles. It's so interactive. A lot of people are engaging with a lot of the stuff that's being posted on X.
That's good. That's good. Actually, there was one, I didn't tweet it out because I just didn't want to give it visibility, but there's one a-hole, many a-holes on X, but there's one idiot who had a tweet something to the effect of Asheville, North Carolina is 2,000 feet above sea level. So this recent event, because Asheville has basically not been destroyed, but it's been heavily punished by this natural disaster. So this natural disaster proves that climate change is a more serious um, uh, threat than anybody else had understood. What the fuck are you talking about? Are you telling me that this water went 2,000 feet uphill?
They're very smart, these people, Charles.
God almighty. I shudder to think, what's the highest level science class that person ever took? Was it like, I don't know, goldfish feeding in second grade? And then he got an F in that and said, you know what, I'll be an expert on climate change.
Kidding aside, Charles, I think you need to get a phone call into Larry David and create an offshoot of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which should just be Charles Ortel is overseas busting balls, and you can be complaining about the music and just railing against all these people. It's a super Larry David moment, by the way.
It was very funny. I love Larry David's comment.
You had another
Don't
good,
like his politics.
Yeah, he's a little bit out of his mind with that, and it's kind of funny. He's the one who introduced Robert Kennedy to Cheryl Hines, so that's interesting. But he had Vindman on the show. I don't know what the hell is going on with Larry David, but you had a very good post on here where Hillary Clinton was at her stupid criminal organization. I don't know if we can get sound.
Yeah.
No, we can't. I don't have it set up with sound in this remote setup, but she's so nervous in this clip, it seems to me. A lot of ums, and she seems angrier than usual, which is difficult for her. What do you think about this?
Well, it's funny you should ask me that question because I'm cogitating about it. And in the shower, I came up with I remembered one fact that I'd basically forgotten, which is that when Bill and Hillary Clinton, quote, made the decision that the Clinton Foundation would be based in Little Rock, there was a horse race. They were trying to figure out, they had several ideas where to put it, and their local newspaper accounts of this that they can't destroy, which I already have, which they had a task force working on this before October 23rd, 1997. So October 23rd, 1997 was in theory the date that the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation was incorporated, not organized, but incorporated. Bylaws were adopted on December 23rd, 1997. So it's at that point that technically the entity was organized, assuming that between October 23rd and December 23rd, they didn't do anything. But that's not the truth. What the truth is that prior to October 23rd, 1997, Bill and Hillary had been thinking about all sorts of different ways that they could grift off this foundation. And they first, had ideas of doing it in Washington, D.C., maybe in New York, maybe elsewhere. Then they limited it to Arkansas. Then they had different places in Arkansas compete, and then different places within Little Rock. But it was after October 23rd, 1997, the press accounts suggest, and Hillary and Bill boast various ways, that they selected the location for this library. Well, neither of them were officers, directors, or trustees of that entity. So they had no power to make any decisions that bound the entity to do anything. So at the very beginning of this episode, or before the beginning of the Clinton Foundation, it was a fraud, right? And how did they pull this fraud off from the beginning? Well, the answer is simple. In the press, the Skip Rutherford has a C-SPAN where he explains this, and he basically said that Bill and Hillary made the decision after they attended the opening of the George H.W. Bush Foundation, Presidential Foundation, in early November. So what does that tell me? This is a team that immediately upon getting power, January 20th, 1993, and even before then, actually, the Clintons did everything they could to get files on their enemies. We know of some, like 700, 800, or 900 FBI files. I don't think we know all the FBI files, but you can be very certain that as much information as they could get on the Bushes, they got. So as an educated guess, the Clintons went on this crime spree with their charity knowing that they could put the Bushes away if Republicans made anything big of a stink about their own foundation. They knew they didn't have to play by the rules, which explains why they never did and why they continue
And
not to be
Obama's doing
playing
the
by the
same
rules.
thing.
But what? Huh?
Obama did the same thing, didn't he? It just keeps ratcheting up.
Right, and on a bigger scale. Obama's
Right.
foundation has a net worth of $1 billion,
Whoa.
close to $1 billion as of the end of last year, 2 years ago, rather. So what they didn't count on, the Bushes and the Clintons, is the emergence of independents and Trump as being the strongest force in American politics. So we are seeing solid evidence that there's no longer a two-party world in the United States of America. Both parties are less relevant. The Democrats, because they've gone communist and stupid, and the rhinos who are out there, the Nancy Kessenbaum or whatever her name is, and that idiot, and what's her name? I want to call her Murgatroyd, Lisa Murkowski up in Alaska. These Republican, Liz Cheney, and Larry Hogan, and all these, and Mitt Romney. These people are irrelevant. Okay, they can become Democrats now or do what they want, but they're not going to be relevant in the Republican Party. And more importantly, people are thinking for themselves. They're using X. They're watching this show. They're watching other shows. They're watching Tucker and other things, and they're making up their own minds. And they're not buying the bullshit that is fed on a daily basis, which is why John Kerry wants to shut down the First Amendment, which is why Hillary Clinton wants to eliminate disinformation. And she has the nerve of doing this, claiming to be one of the smartest lawyers in the world, when there are no articles of incorporation for the parent entity of the Clinton family. There just aren't. Look for yourselves. The original articles were never validly amended. They've gone around using all kinds of fake names. They filed every report they've ever filed is materially misleading and false. And this bitch she's what's it called? A Class A director, in theory, according to the bylaws, which I would argue were never validly adopted and therefore don't have any impact. But by their writing, she and Bill, I believe, and possibly Chelsea at this point, are Class A directors, meaning they control the Clinton Foundation in between board meetings, which is something you cannot do in a public charity, this was only authorized to be a public charity, meaning its board has to be broadly representative of the public at large. You cannot have 3 family members run a public charity at a board meeting, or worse, by the terms of these bylaws, in between board meetings. The bylaws explicitly state, and you can see they were adopted November 2nd, 2013, and then September 10th, 2015, they explicitly state that Class A directors, the Clinton family, I would argue now, there may have been one non-family member, but it's basically Class A is controlled by the Clinton family. They make decisions about this entity between board meetings that are not subject to review. Can't do that in a public charity. Absolutely cannot do. Yet that's exactly what they're doing. What they have done, their record is brutally flawed. The fact that the FBI didn't catch them when they had an open investigation between February 15th, 2001 and sometime in early 2005, the fact that they still haven't caught them from January 2016 forward tells me that the FBI has been covering, they know how bad this is, they've been covering it up, the IRS has been covering it up, the Department of Justice has been covering it up, and they're terrified what's going to happen once Trump comes in, replaces the Justice Department leadership, the IRS leadership, and the FBI leadership, and they go back over this important ground to see how many crooked charities are out there. And I think there are many. And I would note that it is a matter of public record that Larry Doyle and John Moynihan have a case in front of the U.S. tax court. You can go look it up. I've written stories about it. And it has been outstanding since, I think, August of 2018, and it is ongoing. Right? So this is under investigation. They're terrified what's going to happen to them. That's why you've got Eric Holder, of all people. Eric Holder belongs in a Cuban jail, not just in Gitmo. I prefer to see him in a jail at Cuban taxpayer expense. But he's out on the airwaves in the last 24 hours trying to argue that Trump is suffering from cognitive decline. Right, Eric.
They're going for everything here, Charles. I mean, I think you know you're in the high country when your friggin' FBI vault file has 2 pages, 60 documents, and it's never, what is this, her dry cleaning bill? What do they got there? It's never ending. I mean, I don't know, there's all kinds of new
Well,
entries
this is
here.
all, you see, why it's never ending. It's all about false representations. You know, Bill got in trouble as president over the Monica Lewinsky, Paula Jones matters because he lied under oath. And somebody who's prepared to lie under oath is likely to do it more than once. This is a case study in false representations. Every single representation made by any entity associated with the Clinton Foundation is a false representation. And these representations have been made across state lines, across national boundaries, using the mail, using the internet, and by other electronic means, all of which are federal crimes. And moreover, this idiotic concoction of a false charity did not file a tax return in its first period, which means that all of its tax returns are open, no matter what the IRS says. You know, what crooked people in the IRS say.
Amazing.
So, you know, this is a big tsunami that should happen next year when Trump wins, and it should go a long way, I think, to closing the budget deficit. It's not going to close it entirely, but I think the U.S. Treasury could get on the order of $500 billion back by going aggressively against all the donors to these fake charities.
I certainly hope it happens, Charles. We've reached our time limit here on the open part of the discussion. We're going to be heading over to the First Amendment Forum. We could talk more about John Kerry and what an idiot he is trying to destroy the First. It's just the most reprehensible thing. But you know, it's not a surprise, Charles. This is what they've been working on, at least with me, for 7 years, and there's more stuff that they're really digging in now. There's always things that are happening kind of behind the scenes and certainly involved in some of the cases that I'm in. We got to talk about Eric Adams. He is defiant, Charles. He says he's not going to resign. He's going to reign. Did you hear that?
I mean, it's just, and did you see the story about the rapist who broke in at 3:40 this morning your time in New York and raped a woman on 92nd and First?
Oh, I did not. He's not going to.
It's on my Twitter feed.
It's amazing, Charles. It's just terrible. Eric Adams is under federal investigation. We still haven't heard what's going on with Letitia James. I think a lot of people are wondering how the top law enforcement officer in New York State could have all of this going on, not only right underneath her nose, she's frequenting the restaurant, or did when it was still open, that was owned by former NYPD Police Commissioner Edward Caban, not his twin brother, who was shaking down other nightclubs and restaurants. And I have a feeling other businesses, perhaps including X Corp, formerly Twitter. But this is like an absolute criminal enterprise. Some of these police podcasts that I've been watching lately that have excellent information on this, the Sal Greco Show, New York's Finest Unfiltered, they're saying there's never been this level of brazen criminality in New York since John Gotti. I think this is even beyond, because John Gotti was obviously a criminal. This guy's posing as the mayor. It's absolutely absurd, but we're going to be right back. People can join us. If you aren't already a sponsor, please become one. Visit odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. If you're using any of the other sponsorship platforms, thank you very much. But I try to alleviate the need for Vimeo a bit. And people who want to switch to Odyssey for the remainder of September, I'm going to be refunding people's September sponsorship on other platforms if they choose to join on Odyssey. So we'll see you on Odyssey. We'll see you on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Huge thank you to everybody who's on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be right back.